What's up, everyone? Welcome to Mongols. I'm Mike Sparks. This week, I had a chance to sit down with Hounds goalkeeping coach Jon Busch. Bushy had a ton of interesting things to say about the Hounds keeping not one, but two keepers from last season and the platform that gives him to build from. We also talk a bit about the Riveters building a powerhouse keeper team, which is super exciting. At the time of the interview, it was not yet announced that Bailey was signing, so just keep that in mind. But all of it just what we talk about it's great. We also are going to break down all the newly announced signings for the Hounds as well, discuss the new standard for signing players for a 2-year plus an option year, which is new and completely interesting. As always, you can find us on all the social platforms, including YouTube, TikTok, Blue Sky, Instagram, Twitter, etc. And we always appreciate a like and subscribe wherever you're getting this. You can email your thoughts and questions to mongols3@gmail.com. And with that, on with the show. Jon Busch, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. How was your holiday, man?
I was good. It was quiet. I needed some quiet days. I needed to unplug a little bit. So it's even though it's the off season, it's been busy. So yeah. It was nice just to unplug for a couple of days and turn the world off.
When you say unplug now, I'm curious. Are you like a walk in the woods kind of guy? Do you like sit with a book near the fireplace? Like, what does quiet look like for you?
I do like the woods. I do like hikes. It was a little chilly. But yeah, especially during the season when the weather's nice. You know, as you know better than I do, there's plenty of places around here to go hiking. So that's usually part of my Sunday kind of day off days where, you know, I'll work on video in the morning and then I'll take a couple hours and go wander around and listen to podcasts and try not to get lost too far in the woods.
Nice. First off, congrats to you, man. Your starting keeper won pretty much every award he could win in 2024. When that happens, are you able to feel any sort of ownership or any part of that award?
Yeah, I think so. I think, in general, for sure. I think specifically this year with Eric, yes, because I think there was, if I'm being honest, like we had to get him up to speed on a lot of things tactically. He's an unbelievable shot stopper, which everybody knows. He's been that way for years. When I used to train him back in Indy, but if you look at his first 6 years as a pro, he didn't play a lot of games. The last time he really played a lot of games was, I think it was 19 when he played for Swope, and it played 21 games. Since that time, he played one here or there, a couple here or there. He was on loan 1 year with Indy. I think he got 4 games there, if I remember correctly. So there was a lot of work for us to do. Bob and I had these conversations last offseason prior to us signing him. And we had these same conversations with Eric. And Eric's the one that did all the work. We just kind of led him in the right direction. So for me personally, there was I took a lot of pride in this one because there was more to do than other normal years, if you will. So it was nice to see him get his reward for the hard work he put in.
Good. No, I'm glad. I know that oftentimes, not that you would get overlooked, but obviously there's a ton of work that you put in as a keeper coach. And as you mentioned, there's a ton of work you do with Eric. So, I think it's important that, you get some of the accolades as well. Big news, obviously, that both Eric and Jacob are coming back this year. It feels like it's been forever since we've done something like that. What kind of opportunity does that present to you, knowing that you don't have to start from square one with keepers this offseason?
Yeah, it's nice to have 2 out of the 3 back. It does give us all familiarity with each other, with the style of play of the team, the profile of our goalkeepers within that team environment. So, yeah, you're not starting from ground zero again. So we're in a good spot there. We're obviously looking for a third goalkeeper, and there's no specific order right now. There's not 1, 2, and 3. Yes, Eric had a very good second half of this season. and led to him obviously winning all those accolades. But we're looking to create an environment that um, that creates competition between all three of them. Better than I do. Bob will play whoever gives him the best opportunity, and so you don't want to say there's no true number one, but we want competition. So, I've been looking at videos, talking to agents, talking to goalkeepers, went through our first combine. We're going to have a second combine here in a few weeks. I'm looking for the right person to push Eric as well as push Jacob and create, just a very competitive, but, proper competitive environment for all three of them to develop as goalkeepers.
You and I had talked last season amid a stretch where Eric was having some struggles, and you were very open about the fact that it was just like, look, it's not good enough. You gave Jacob some time.
Mm-hmm.
He
Mm-hmm.
really sort of flourished. What was it about sort of both of them that said, in your mind, yes, bring them both back? Like we want them both back.
So I think, if you, again, and I think a lot of people, you just brought up, but a lot of people forget because of how well the season ended for
Mhm.
Eric, those struggles in the first half of the season. I mean, we dropped them twice.
Yeah.
We dropped them twice in the first 15, 16 games of the season. He was making good saves, but he was making mistakes, which again, I knew to an extent it would probably happen just because of the lack of game time. Um, but it lasted a bit longer than we thought, and so we had to deal with that. But when he did get it right, you look at the upside, in the last 16 games of the season and the playoffs and all that. I think back to the save in Charleston right before halftime, low to his left. If he doesn't make that save, it's 2-0 going into halftime, and that's a save that him and I had been talking about all season long, because normally he would come flying out at that and not get close enough to it to get hit by it. And it made me feel good on the bench, because that was something we'd been working on for months and months and months in training, and to see him do it at that moment, at a key moment of a game, to read it right and to be able to make that big save to keep us in the game, shows what he's capable of, at this level. So, we're hoping going into preseason, when he comes back in, we're starting at that level and continuing to move up, right? If, let's compare it to a house. Last year we were putting the bricks on the ground level. We want to be starting on the second floor when we get into preseason, and building from there. So that's kind of where why we wanted Eric back. As far as Jacob, you know, uh, we see potential there. We see a very big possible upside. Um, Again, being honest, he grew, but he didn't grow as much as we were hoping he would this season. Um, and every player's path is different. Every goalkeeper's path is different. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer to really understand what it means to be a pro. You know, um, it's not a David Beckham lifestyle, if you will, and it's meat and potatoes. It's grinding every day. For college kids that come out, the season's 10 months long compared to whatever 2 to 3. All of this is factored into it. So there we see potential. We want to see more growth in year two from Jacob.
That's totally fair. Jacob had, I think there were some standout moments
Hmm.
versus fans where you could see the potential, which is great.
Hmm.
Just back to Eric, just for a second. One of the things that really struck me, we had one of our co-hosts sort of really did a deep dive statistically, and I think a lot of times when you watch a keeper, there's an eye test where like
Hmm.
stats could
Hmm.
look one way, but you could feel a different way. I was kind of blown away. I knew that Eric had a good like end of the season for sure, but
Yeah.
statistically, just like head and shoulders above a lot of the other guys. As the keeper coach, you mentioned starting on that second floor. How do you help him go even further so that he's not just head and shoulders. He's doing even more. Without giving away too many secrets,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
what's that like for you?
So, for me, I break it down into a few different categories, right? By far, he's a fantastic shot stopper. There's absolutely no denying that, and a lot of those awards were based on that and those numbers that
Mm-hmm.
are directly correlating to that. He got better dealing with crosses. You know how important that is to us here, not just Bob, but myself as well in our player profile of being active off your line. His distribution, can be better. Those are all different categories that we look at, and in today's world in football, like everything is so analytical, right? There's so many numbers for every little thing. And we look at them every week after a game. There's some that put a lot of value into, but there's some that you're like, okay, there's too many numbers, right? And you have to go back to the old eye test, like you said a few minutes ago. I want to watch the game. I want to see the goalkeeper, right? Because again, if you think back to Eric in the beginning of the season, a lot of those mistakes that he was making, we weren't punished, and I use the example, just the home game against Miami, where he misreads the through ball and he's, basically at the top of the 18 and the guy comes in, cuts inside of him, has a wide open goal and misses. We're just fortunate the guy missed. I mean, he could have passed the goal. So there's an example of something that in the stats doesn't appear because the guy doesn't score. But for me, it's in the back of my head of he didn't keep coming and just clear it down the field. He misread it, didn't see the guy, whatever the explanation was. So you always have to have that eye test. And for me, again, shot stopping, fantastic. Now can we make, dealing with crosses better? Can we make his distribution better? So there's a lot of good things and there's plenty of areas to continue to work on.
Yeah. I'm just curious from your perspective. Last question on the Hounds, and then I got other stuff I want to talk to you about.
Okay.
As the keeper coach, do you go into a season trying to set like goals from a goalkeeping perspective, or do you try to approach it just sort of each game as at a time and just trying to take things as they come?
A little bit of both. The first day when we all come in together, we'll sit and we'll chat. I'll give them my whole group thoughts and ideas and my kind of goals for the season for our goalkeeping department, and then I will give them a printout that they have a couple days to fill out to think about, and I want their individual goals, and then they'll give it back to me, and I'll sit with each one of them individually, and we'll kind of go through them and discuss them and tweak them if we need to tweak them.
Nice. That's cool. It's just the inner workings of that always fascinates me.
Mm-hmm.
Switching gears a bit. So Reagan Duvall was
Mm-hmm.
announced as the keeper coach for the Riveters. She specifically shouted you out in the announcement. What is your relationship like with Reagan and how sort of the Riveters are approaching keeping?
Well, I paid her a lot for that, so I appreciate that. So yeah, that cost me a lot of money, that one. No, I mean, part of my kind of whatever you call it, secondary responsibilities since I've been here is pretty much everything goalkeeping under the Riverhounds, umbrella, and from the academy and hiring staff and looking over the curriculum and all that stuff to now the women's team. So we had brought Reagan onto the academy side of things, and then obviously when the women's team came up, uh, she showed interest. I've watched her run sessions. I talk with I talk with Scotty about it. I think it's a good situation for our goalkeepers that are going to be on that team, and I also think it's a very good and learning experience for Reagan to be able to deal with that level. So I think it's a win-win. She's a very good young goalkeeper coach. We were just talking the other day because we had a young lady up checking out the facilities and doing a little training with Reagan that's going to be playing for us this summer. And one of the conversations I was having with Scotty while we were watching this session is Reagan is going to learn not just this next level of goalkeepers and on the field stuff, but how to have those conversations. And our goal is to have two top-notch goalkeepers for that team, and then a couple more depending on how far we go down. But she's now going to have to learn how to have those everyday conversations, because you're going to have one that plays. You may have one that's not playing, that's might be a little disgruntled. And how do you have those open and honest conversations and still get the best out of each goalkeeper in that environment? So I think it's a win-win for not just our team, but also for Reagan to develop as a young goalkeeper coach.
For sure. And the team just announced that the German international Pauline Nels
Mhm.
signed as a keeper. So, setting the bar high to start with.
Yep, and there's another one coming down the pipeline.
Oh, dang. Okay. I wanted to talk to you real quick. This is something that you're on social media, you're always plugging. You have your own line of goalie gloves. How did that come about?
So I was playing in San Jose about 150 years ago now, I guess. And a mutual friend of mine, another goalkeeper coach, who had a mutual friend up in Canada, had kind of started this company on the side because he had a son who was a high school goalkeeper, and he just got tired of overpaying for gloves because the price of gloves just kept going up and up and up. So anyway, he kind of had this little side hustle going up in Canada, had a couple models on the website, but not really doing much with it because his full-time job made him a lot more money. So long story short, we got connected through our mutual friend. Um, I went up to Vancouver, met him, sat with him, discussed everything. A couple weeks later, we kind of put it all together. Um, we had the Canadian side of it for a couple of years, and long story short, he just a couple of years into it, he said, "Listen, my real business is just booming. It's taking up too much of my time. HPG Canada is not really doing anything. There's not really market here." So he basically just gave me the company. He's like, "It's yours." And we shut down HPG Canada. We continue to grow and build HPG in the USA, and I haven't bankrupted it yet. So we're doing something right. But no, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, I don't even know what it's been, 10, 11, 12, 12. I don't even know how many years it's been now. But it's just another kind of piece of the puzzle where, again, I don't know anything other than goalkeeping. So, I might as well stay in my box.
I'm very curious because I'm a design guy. So,
Yeah.
just to geek out for a second, how involved are you with sort of the look and feel? What features are most important to you in a glove? Like when you look at a glove, how are you like that one's crap, but that one's good? Give me some of the secrets.
Well, this has tested me of getting out of my box on certain things. I'm very old school. The white glove that you see, the Jon Busch special. That's the one I wore for, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years straight. I like simple. Um, I like meat and potatoes, if you will. But kids like colors. And so, you'll see us change the colors pretty much once a year, and we'll come up with something else. I'm always looking around. I'm always on the internet looking at other companies, seeing what their new designs are, or seeing if there's, a new latex out there that everybody's talking about. At the end of the day, the most important thing on a glove is the latex that they use. And, the higher level foam, the higher level latex, the better the grip is, in all conditions. So for us, that's the most important thing. Everything else is just cosmetics. So, you know, we use the top end latex on all of our game gloves. And our training gloves, we drop one level down, which is still very, very good because it gives just a little bit more durability for the training environments, especially the amount of kids that are training now on turf fields, and those tear gloves up. So that's the most important thing, is just the latex used. Um, I just look at other companies and what colors. I'll do some research into what the colors are coming the next year, and how can we involve those in our company. And like I said, kids love colors. I'm a little bit anti-color. I like either white or black, but that's what sells. And so, we're not Adidas or Nike or these big companies that can change every 3 months, but every year, every other year, we're looking to add either a new color or a little bit different design into it.
For any keepers out there, let them know, where can they get the gloves? What's the best way?
You can go to hpgoalkeeping.com.
Awesome. 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 Jon, I always appreciate the time. Best of luck this off season, and can't wait to be seeing you at Highmark here in just a few short months. It's crazy.
Yeah, we're getting there. I mean, we've got 3 weeks till preseason starts, so
Yeah.
we're about to get back after it.
Awesome. Thanks, Jon.
Thanks for having me.
Steve Mattias, Josh Brokaw, welcome, gentlemen. First off, Steve, how's your week been?
It's been pretty good. Getting back into the flow of things as things kick back off on campus, and back to getting caught up on everything, planning for the semester, getting ready to teach again tomorrow. So, a little different pace than the winter recess, but it's been good. This cold has been tough. Rory has been going insane because it's just been a little too cold to get him out. So got to go for a short hike yesterday at a park just up the street, and he had a blast, which made it so I had a blast. So that's about it.
I'm very curious because you just said I have to teach tomorrow. What's the lesson plan? What are you teaching?
We're talking about letters of reference and selecting your PA dental medical school list to apply to. So
nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Josh, how you been?
Good. It's feeling a lot like the Hound season is starting soon. Lots of stuff going on with the Steel Army with like ordering the membership packages. Scarf order is in, membership card order is in, third item order is in. We have a meeting next week with a local vendor for shipping and shirt designs and that kind of stuff. So it's all starting to happen and feeling like it's soon. So
it's nuts. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the signings here in a bit, but yeah, we're 3 weeks away from the preseason, like closing in. It's here. So
it's crazy.
It's very crazy. Yeah. It's nuts. Players are starting to come back, and it's it's all just going to snowball really, really quickly. So, Let's talk about the Jon Busch interview. There was a lot that he shared there.
Mm-hmm.
Steve, I'll start with you. Just sort of initial impressions.
I really like Bushy. I was saying to you, Mike, how he's just a really personable guy. And I think that comes through in the way he talks when he's doing an interview, that he's just down to earth, talks about things as they are, doesn't pull punches, but also doesn't try to hide things like in a way that it's like, he's like, no, I can't talk about that, or I won't talk about that. But here's the things I will talk about. And that's great. I really liked listening to him talk about why we had two keepers come back. So specifically thinking about Eric, hoping to see him take a next level jump, but also Randolph, that they think there's a lot more room for him to develop. And the idea that they don't have a number one going into the season, I'm skeptical, but I get what he's saying about the competition and looking for a third keeper to push.
I mean, that's real. I'm curious about that. So, he specifically called out the fact it was interesting because he was very transparent about they almost had reservations about Eric going into the season, either him or Bob, basically saying like he hasn't had a lot of game time. We know there's going to be growing pains, but obviously he finished in a flourish, won all sorts of awards, things like that. But it feels like they believe in Jacob's potential. Josh, what are your thoughts? I mean, after the way that Eric finished the season, in your mind, is he like just by and large just the default starting keeper, or do you think we're actually going to see some kind of battle here, and maybe there is going to be time where we don't see Eric early in the season?
I mean, two different questions there. One, do I think he should be or is the starting keeper? I mean, you're asking me if the Golden Glove winner should be the starting keeper. The answer is yeah. I think he should be. And I think he probably has earned it. But do I think we're going to see other keepers in some situations? Also, yeah, because it's Bob and it's the system, and I'm sure he's going to have an off week or something like that in practice, and Bob's going to be like, "You're on the bench," and then we're going to be like, "Why is he on the bench?" And it's going to be, pandemonium, but it'll end up being fine. But yeah, I think Dick is the starting keeper, even if they're not willing to say he is the starting keeper, which keeps him motivated. Sure, I get it, whatever, but it's silly to think the guy who got the Golden Glove is not the starting keeper.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought was really interesting, and he mentions it he was basically teasing it during the interview. We did the interview on Tuesday. So since Tuesday, it was actually announced who the second Riveters keeper is that the team has signed, and that is Bailey Herforth. She is the 2023 W League Golden Glove winner, and she made Team of the Year. She led Tampa that season to a 12-0-0 record. So now, basically Reagan Duvall, who we talked about also, is the goalkeeper coach for the Riveters. She's got a real balancing act on her hands, which, Bushy alluded to, because now you basically have the 2023 Golden Glove winner for the W on your team. And you also have Pauline Nels, who has won the UEFA U17 championship with Germany and is part of the U20 World Cup team for Germany. They're both in your squad. So how do you, it's a great problem to have, but you can't play them both. So what do you do? So yeah. I don't know. Thoughts on that, Steve?
I don't know enough about either of these players yet. I think it's, I can go back and look at some highlights and whatnot, but quite frankly, U20 women's stuff is not on my radar.
What?
I would love to have the time to be able to just sit and watch soccer of all ages around the world all the time, but I don't. No, I think that this is great and continues to emphasize the fact that the Riveters are putting together a team that they want to be competitive. So we talked last week about what we wanted for resolutions. And this was kind of what I talked about, right? Like a team that comes out and can be entertaining and draw people in. I think both of these signings are statements in that direction. So I love it.
Yeah, agreed. I kept looking for it. I don't know if either of you guys saw it. Apparently they did an interview with Tessa Delarose. She was in this week. They teased it on social media, but I couldn't actually find the full video. And did either of you guys see it?
I don't remember seeing it.
Yeah, I was trying to dig it up today. So maybe it'll come out later this week. But yeah, the bar has definitely been set pretty high, starting at the keeper position. And like you said, Steve, I think what will be interesting is in the preseason, we always get all of this news about a lot of players who we've never heard of before. And one of our jobs is to kind of dig into it a little bit, but we also go into it with the understanding that some of these names we're not going to even hear again, in a month or two, because it didn't work out. This is a case where this is going to be a very interesting storyline to watch as the season progresses, because I don't think either of these players are going anywhere. And so, Reagan trying to balance that is going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I guess, Josh, any thoughts on that before we sort of move on and talk about some of the Hound signings?
Yeah, I'm just digging into it, trying to figure out, okay, so Germany's soccer program, the women's soccer program, where's that ranking? That's the interesting thing when it comes to women's soccer is other countries have, varying degrees of taking it seriously and actually getting their acts together and having well thought out programs. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of okay, Germany, how much do they got their stuff together compared to other countries? Because United States, I feel has really led the way there. Very different than on the men's side. So
yeah.
Before we move on, I just want to say one more thing about the Bushy interview, that I found it hilarious when he was talking about his line of goalkeeper gloves and talking about how he has to do colors for the kids, but he just wants his plain black and white ones. And if that's not Bushy, I don't know what is.
Yeah. No, thoroughly enjoyed that. And how he was just just kind of gave it to me. And now I'm going with it. I was great. And actually, so, I wasn't going to reference this, but after we got done talking, he was just saying about, I guess, how there's an internal competition between him and Rob Vincent to see who can get on our show most. So I just figured I'd start keeping track behind me with a chalkboard of who's been on our show the most. Vincent has a bit of a head start because we had him on after he retired as a player, but before he was a coach. So I counted that, but Bushy might push back. So we might have to have Bushy on before we have Vincent back on. So, John, if you're listening, that's for you. Guys, I guess moving on, let's talk about the Hound signings. So there were 3 signings announced this week. One is somebody that we will all be familiar with, which is Burton Jockeson. He is back on a 1-year deal plus an option. We're going to talk about how that's a little bit different from what else is going on with some other players. Josh, immediate reactions to Jockeson coming back.
I mean, it was such a I just felt so much better about the season. Like going into this, thinking, oh, what are we going to do about our forward situation? How's this going to work? Is it even possible to get Jockeson back? I don't know. And then when they announced it, I was just like, all right, I'm not saying we're completely set now, but it's definitely in the right direction. Yeah. I was a little bit sad to see it was a 1-1, 1-year contract, 1-year option. But I guess he played last year, so it's in a way you can look at it, and we're gonna have a little bit more consistency there. But yeah, it's an exciting signing, and I'm thrilled about it. Going through our top forwards we've had in recent years. Granted, he hasn't played as many games as some of the other ones, but his percentage as far as goals per game are likely to score is actually higher than any of the other forwards we've had, which is kind of surprising. But again, smaller sample size than all of the other forwards.
Yeah. Steve, thoughts?
I mean, great, right? Bringing in a guy that already had some familiarity with the system while he was in on loan, that we saw have ambitions to make things happen both for himself and for other players. I mean, if you're going to bring back a guy that's got experience, that's relatively inexperienced in the league, he's the guy to do it with. And, I mean, great. Yeah. The 1-1 contract. I don't know. I mean, we'll talk more about contracts overall, but I think I think this is for me where, you're doing what you can do to get the player here. And maybe he thinks that in a couple of years, he's going to have performed well enough that he can get a good look from a number of teams and maybe get looked at by an MLS team again. So glad to have him back. And since we hadn't signed any forwards until this week, it's really nice to see a couple on the roster to think about the start of the season.
My question for you guys is, last season, he kind of played out on the wing a little bit. He wasn't really like a center forward striker. Is this a case where if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing, where we keep him as sort of a winger, or you keep him with a forward pairing, or do you think we move him more centrally? Steve, you're laughing.
Because the way you asked the question is, what do I think? I think we do keep him there. Do I think Bob's going to do that? I have no faith that Bob will not put him as a target center forward.
Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good call out. But in a Bob's defense type of situation here, I do think he's going to play him where he is best suited with the system that he has going, with the players he has, and how he can fit them in there. So if he is in a different position, it's probably going, or different, in the middle more so. It's going to be less, I feel like, because he, thinks he'll be better there, and more because it will be better for the whole system as a whole with the players he has. And I do think we're going to see much of the same from him this season that we did last season overall.
I think the one thing about if he does stay out sort of a little bit wider, even if it's a 2 up front, he's just off to the side, the trickle down effects that we saw from the end of last season, such as, Robbie Mertz is now not forced to play out there. He's tucking in a little bit more. I think it just adds a little bit more attacking depth to the middle of the field, which could be very interesting, especially to start the season. Was when we did our resolutions last week, and a bunch of people were saying one of the biggest things was let's not start the season slow. And I think bringing in someone like Jockeson, who has had success with this team attacking, with the midfielders that we have, gives us some hope of being able to pick up right where we left off, on that impressive run at the end of last year. So fingers crossed that, we get it working and we can find, somebody to play with them. Hopefully. I think we're all kind of saying if it ain't broke, but again, Steve, to your point, what we think doesn't matter. Bob's going to do what Bob's going to do. So yeah. Two other signings that were announced this week. We signed Brigham Larson, who is a forward, and Charles All, who is a midfielder. Both of these to 2 years plus a 1-year option. And I want to talk about this specifically. But first, Larson is a 6'4" striker from Oslo, Norway. We shared some of the highlight reels from him over on Blue Sky. He seems to be almost more of a target forward in that he will bring the ball down and encourage other players into the play. He can still score, but he's not a pure striker in my mind. He's more of that central hold up kind of guy, big body. We'll see if that's how he's used. All is an attacking midfielder, seems to be really good on set pieces and breaking lines. Initially, Bob, the comment in the news release, Bob was making it almost sound like this was the number 10 that we've been missing. But if you go back and you look at his stats in terms of goals and assists, they're not like through the roof. So we'll have to sort of see how this works, considering the midfield that we already have and the guys that we've already brought back. And we're like, how are these guys going to get on the field? To hear that we have another promising midfielder is kind of like I don't, especially with a 2-year deal and a 1-year option. Yeah. But before we talk about the 2-year deal, 1-year option, I guess, Josh, your initial thoughts on these other two signings.
Yeah, it's another situation where it's like, I don't know much about them, don't know how good they're going to be, but I do think they seem promising. I don't know if we should expect them to be like, the next stars of the Riverhounds, but I do like the fact that, we're going to talk about the contract a little bit more, but it's just, I do like the thought of consistency and be able to build them up, or at least get them figured out for our system and actually keep them.
Yeah. Steve, thoughts?
I mean, both these guys look like they've got the tools to eventually be really successful in the USL. And so bring these guys onto a Bob Lilly team where he excels at developing younger talent. I think these guys are going to be contributors. I mean, how many guys have we seen over the past few years that by halfway through the season are in their rookie season playing, if not as a starter, as one of the first guys off the bench? And so I'm excited to see where these guys can end up with the Hounds. And I think it's great. The contracts.
Let's do it.
Love it. Absolutely love it. So in some of my conversations behind the scenes, trying to figure out okay, what's going on with this? And me wondering, is this an actual shift for the team trying to find a way to build some more stability that we've been clamoring for years? And I think the answer to that is yes, and it should be taken as that the team is moving to a place where they're looking to say, hey, if we've got talent that we believe in, we're going to try to lock them down for years and have stability, rather than having such a cyclical every 2 years, you can't re-sign guys because they're out of their options.
Josh, thoughts?
Yeah, not only does it add stability, but it also adds a dynamic that we haven't really seen the Hounds take advantage of much, which is selling players. If we the thought about, these are newer players, it's a little bit risky to have a 2-year contract with a 1-year option. It's or we aren't really taking that big of a risk. And it's okay, he's not going to work out. So we sell his contract or sell a player in general to another team, and we make some money off that. So it's a possibility that we do see some more wheeling and dealing, which would be fantastic.
Yeah. In my mind, I immediately went into almost like a pros and cons list, because we have been calling for more stability forever. And so it's just sign these guys to longer deals. They know they're going to be around, especially players that we know we want to keep. I think that what's interesting to me, and we'll see if this continues, is especially for guys that are fresh out of college, every so often you'll have a Bradley Sample or a Danny Griffin that hits straight out of college, and you're great, they're making a great impact, super. But there's also, year after year where there's 3-4 guys that come out of college that there's a lot of hype around them, and then nothing happens. And so in the case where that does occur, we now are going to be carrying somebody for another year. If they're not playing, they're likely not going to get sold. No one's going to buy them. And so you're just kind of stuck shouldering that load for 2 years. So I think one of two things. It'll be very interesting to see the additional signings that come out, how many of them are fresh out of college, and how many of them get 2-year deals versus 1-year deal. If that is some level of confidence from the club as to how well these guys are actually going to do. And then, as we get closer to the end of preseason, we're looking at it and being like, well, these guys got 2-year deals, so we may see more of them on the field than these guys who got 1-year deals. We'll see. But it as much as I want it, I still think that there is this liability that hopefully we're not hamstringing ourselves at some point. Players like Junior Etu to come in, get a 2-year deal in 1 year. We know what Junior is. Danny Griffin, we know what those guys are. Great. Sign them long-term deals. We want them. Some of these newer guys, I'm just like, this could be interesting, and hopefully we don't burn ourselves. So, are either of you guys worried about that at all? Or are you just like, nope, let's do 2 and 1. And like, that's what people deserve.
I don't think 2 and 1's that big of a risk. Like, I still don't like, it's basically like saying we have a player on contract for 2 years. That's barely anything. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I don't feel like it's that big of a risk to have someone on contract for 2 years. So no, I'm not worried about it. Now, if it was like, I feel like there was a deal back in the day where it was like maybe Chevy or something like that, got a deal that was supposed to be like for like 3 or 4 years, and then he bombed out within the first half of the first year. And I was like, well, we just have that contract for this player that, is just not doing good, not taking it seriously situation. But that was forever ago. So like, that's a little bit different than just 2 years.
Yeah.
Wow. Maybe also 5 years. Sorry, go ahead.
I have not thought about that guy in a long, long time. And my most positive memory of him was him sitting in my back seat in an Uber and having a conversation with him. Nothing on the field.
Wait. Did he know that you knew who he was?
I think it was like right after he signed. And so it was like right as I was starting to follow the Hounds a little more. And so I wasn't like following everything. And so I'm like, oh yeah, I've been to a few games. And so then I looked him up and I was like, oh, I'm going to pay attention to this guy. And it's not worth it.
But Steve, are you worried at all about the 2+1?
No, because I think there's always going to be a market for players that we have under contract if they're doing anything, right? I mean, unless these guys are getting injured, I think there is the opportunity for some of these players to get, maybe not sold for much of anything, but we can offload their contracts to MLS Next Pro or League One team, I think fairly easily if these guys have any promise, which obviously they do if Bob's willing to give them 2-year guaranteed contracts. So I don't think the risk is that big. But I do think that I look at this and I say, this is great. And it provides a lot more opportunity for the team to think about what it looks like to invest in players. And so I think about a guy like Robbie Mertz or even Danny Griffin, who we look at them now and we're like, like they were the right call to sign. But what was his name? Went and played at Fuego FC for a little while down in League One after he left the Hounds. Like, he was the guy that was supposed to be the exciting midfielder that season. And he didn't pan out. Right. And so I think that there's something that Bob sees talent and he can make a pretty good guess of these guys are going to eventually get there. And so I think I want to take this as a little more, he sees these guys as players like Danny and Robbie that it might take him a little longer, but he thinks they're going to be really good, as opposed to, hey, this is the guy showing the most promise right away.
Yeah. I think it'll be very interesting. I think this all has a whole bunch of trickle-down effects for us as fans, because I think, if you're signing more players to multi-year deals, we are very used to, we get to the end of the season and it's like, all right, well, we're going to keep some of these guys. And then there's like a revolving door of like, who's the new guy? There might be only like a few new guys next year because we have so many guys under contract. But I also think from a like planning perspective, they can bring in a guy that they think has potential, almost like a Jacob Randolph, where it's like, we think he has potential. We're not sure how he's going to handle the transition from college to pro, but this gives them a year to develop the guy. All doesn't have to start right away. He could if he's good enough, but we have the midfield depth. And so maybe this is a signing not just for this year, but it's actually for next year. They think that he's going to be the guy next year. And it just feels like that is a muscle that we have not seen the organization utilize. And so it will be very interesting to see them navigate even the whole thing of like, they didn't work out after 1 year and we want to sell them. How many times have we sold a player? Like it doesn't, I don't know. Like it doesn't really feel like it happens. And
to that, like, I think the last player that I know we sold would have been Mike DeShields to make room. And I don't think we've made anything on that deal. I think it was, we'll give you this guy for relatively nothing so that we can have roster space.
It's basically a tradesy, right? Was that the tradesy one?
Well, because we get their player, Busha on loan from them and sold him. Yeah. But it's like it's not strategic in the sense of, hey, this player is worth something and we're going to take advantage of that to reinvest in other players.
Yeah. I'm really excited for it. I think from a player's perspective, I think it's fantastic because it gives them a little bit more stability. They don't feel like, well, I might just be here for 1 year and then I'm gone. They know that they're going to be around for a little bit. And then two, like I said, just to sort of see what this does to the organization over time. And, do we, if this works out, do we start to see 3-year deals? Do we start to see 4? I mean, there's a limit to what we're not going to go full Chelsea and like sign people to like 16-year deals and like amortize their contract, but it will be interesting. So I'm excited. It sounds like, well, obviously with Jacqueline, he got a 1-year deal plus a 1. Some of that is going to be what the players want. Some of that's going to be what the team wants. But it will be interesting to sort of see as they keep announcing contracts over the course of the preseason, how this all sort of shakes out and whether the 2-1 is now the new norm or some people get more, some people get less, and what can we glean from that? So
I think even if it's not the new norm, it's a new option that we haven't seen. And that really, really makes me happy that it's not just 1-1s and then the occasional multi-year contract for a midfielder.
Yeah, it's going to be flipped. It's going to be what I think is going to happen is we're going to see the 2-1s are the normal. And then like the oddball ones will be like the 1-1s or maybe a 3-1. Who knows? That's a possibility.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, guys, I think that's everything that is going on. We did mention that we are only a few weeks away from preseason, so we expect that signings are likely going to be coming fast and furious. We know that Bob likes to bring in a lot of guys on trial during the preseason, so we're going to be keeping an eye out on those. Although, the new development as of really last year was they're trying to be really tight-lipped about who it is that they bring in because they don't want news to leak out of who's here and have potentially people come and poach them. So we'll see what happens there, but I expect at least a few more announcements here before preseason gets rolling.
All college kids, or do you think we have like one more big announcement?
I'm holding out hope for one announcement in particular to see if it happens, and we'll just kind of leave it at that. I'm like 30% on that, but would love to see it happen. So.
Yeah, for me, I think we need to do something beyond Jacqueline at forward.
Yeah,
with an experienced goal scorer, even if it's not the prime person, but just somebody that knows how to play in the league off the bat. I think is important. So I hope to see at least that, if not something great.
Robbie Vincent coming back.
Is that how we do the wings, Mike?
Yeah. Well, guys, I guess anything else for this one?
Nope.
No.
Awesome. It's a pleasure as always. Thank you everyone for listening. Obviously, give this a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. Otherwise, we said news is going to be coming fast and furious here for both the Riverhounds and the Riveters. We will be back with more content around both of them very, very soon.
Later.
See ya.